Here's a great tip from investors. Investors want to see coachability. If you're pitching to someone and they ask you a question, you don't ever want to argue with them. That never goes over well. And sometimes they're just testing you.
Storytelling sometimes is so undervalued.
If you can't condense your achievement in a powerful way without it being arrogant, but knowing what your true worth is.
Donna Griffit is a corporate storyteller, a pitch alchemist for startups, a best-selling author, and a coach at Stanford. With over 20 plus years, she has roamed the globe working with 1,000 plus startups, Fortune 500 companies, and venture capitalists.
My favorite way to tell the pain is their origin story.
Whatever pre-work you're sending, there is a part of that storytelling that starts with the right question.
It's about understanding what the audience wants to hear, what their questions are. I am an AI adopter. I don't use it when I write for my client. That would be doing them a disservice. But I do encourage them when searching for, when people come to me and they're like, I've been told I'm not a very good presenter. I would say 85 to 95% of the time, they don't have a good message.
Hello, welcome to the Priyanka Shinde Podcast, where we dive into the art and science of strategy, execution, and leadership. I'm your host, Priyanka Shinde, author of The Art of Strategic Execution and a consultant for tech leaders. In this podcast, I bring you candid conversations with top executives, startup founders, and industry experts who are driving innovation, delivering results, and staying ahead in today's competitive landscape. We will break down what it takes to tap into founder mode and turn vision into action. If you are serious about elevating your leadership and execution skills, make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or YouTube. It helps the podcast and ensures you never miss an episode. Hi everyone, welcome to the Priyanka Shinde Podcast. Today I have a very special guest, Donna Griffit, world-renowned corporate storyteller, pitch alchemist, and the best-selling author of the book, Sticking to My Story, The Alchemy of Storytelling for Startups. Donna has worked globally for 2 decades in over 30 countries with Fortune 500 companies, startups, and investors in a wide variety of industries, helping them create, edit, and deliver powerful presentations, pitches, and messages. She can magically spin raw data into compelling stories that captivate audiences and drive results. Through her guidance, clients have raised over $2 billion. Donna is also a communication coach for the Stanford's Graduate School of Business, helping the leaders of tomorrow become stellar communicators. Welcome to the show, Donna. I'm really excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much. It's great to reconnect, Priyanka. It's always good to see you.
Yes, same here. And there is so much that you have been doing since the time we last talked. So yeah, please, in your own words, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about what you do today.
I think you basically nailed it in that intro. My mission in life is to keep people from being boring, helping them, take all this raw data. Think of it as like, I'm a foodie, so I always go to food. So you buy all these wonderful groceries and ingredients at the grocery store. You invite people over for dinner. You cannot put a slab of meat and a container of cream and raw rice in front of them. It has to be cooked, it has to be prepped, it has to be seasoned. And then it comes together and something magical happens as you're cooking. It turns into a meal. It turns into nutritious, delicious, and something that connects people all around. And it's the exact same process with a pitch, except you can't eat it. I'm taking all of the raw data and the bits and the bytes and the numbers and the aspirations and the dreams and the goals and figuring out what goes with which course, what to put together, how to season it in the most perfect way for the right investors. And it all happens as the founder watches. So it's like I'm cooking for them in live, and then they get to taste it and say, "Ooh, this is perfect. This needs more salt." And we adjust as we go. And they emerge after 2 hours with a perfectly cooked pitch.
That's such a great way of putting it. And I'm like visualizing the food and you cooking as you're
I'm
talking.
hungry. I'm hungry now.
Yeah, as you're talking through it. And almost, I kind of think about, even on the restaurant menus, there is a way to describe the dish. And I feel like that is like
Yeah.
the cherry on top in terms of storytelling.
You're right, you're right, and then that's where we would create the blurb that we'd send out to investors ahead of time, the little menu, the teaser that makes them want to come to your restaurant and eat. That's very
Yeah,
true.
it's a great analogy. I think it kind of everybody can connect with food and going to a restaurant, right? So that's a great start. I mean, you started working in a hospital setting, if I believe. And so, how did you end up where you're today? Like,
Wow, you've gone way back. So that was my internship. I got my master's degree at NYU in drama therapy. I had always been into acting and theater, and something in me also knew that I didn't want to be waiting tables when I was 30, waiting for my big break. So I needed to find something that I loved as much as I did acting. And when I was 16, I discovered this thing called drama therapy, which was the combination of psychology and theater. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. This is exactly what I want to do. And everything I did was geared towards getting into the master's program at NYU. And then when I did get in and I went, it was a wonderful program. I found out that the career opportunities for a drama therapist were basically that of a starving artist. I'd have to probably be waiting tables to supplement it. And I was just like, you know what? I didn't come this far in order to be doing that. What else can I do with my skills and my talents and the knowledge that I've amassed? So I did my internship at Bellevue Hospital with homeless mentally ill men in an inpatient program, and I wrote my thesis about that time. And it was right around 9/11, and I was living down right in the financial district when 9/11 happened, and I was displaced. So there was this real powerful parallel that was happening at the same time, and the whole question of home and homelessness, but that's for another conversation. So it was from there that I started searching for, okay, what do I want to do with all of this? And one of my lecturers happened to say in one of the classes that she had a friend that traveled the globe and gave workshops. And I was just like, ooh, sign me up. How do I do that? And I searched for courses I could take in at NYU. There was a postmaster's continuing ed program in training and organizational development. Enrolled for that, sent my resume to the first place I saw hiring not corporate stories, corporate trainers. And I submitted my resume, and I was hired by an amazing boutique firm in New York. I got to travel the world teaching presentation skills and business writing skills. It was loads of fun, fascinating to see how universally people struggle with the same issues. And that was great until 2008 when I had to reinvent it because of obvious reasons in the world.
wow, it's just so amazing. There's like you start in a one way, and even drama, it's a lot about storytelling. So it's not like you were far
It's one of the oldest forms of storytelling, theater. And then in my book, I use theater as the framework for an investor deck. So it's very much alive in
Yeah,
it.
yeah. And that's one more thing or one thing we have in common is so I did do drama and things in the college as well. And so it just took me back to my early days.
It's the best.
So, what would you say was like a pivotal moment or a decision that really shaped your career?
So one was discovering drama therapy, but then pivoting from drama therapy to corporate training. And then again, so we'll just pick up from 2008 for, everybody that remembers it was there or knows about it. The world was kind of collapsing. All of the investment banks were imploding. And the first thing that happens in a recession, a financial crisis, is that organizations cut anything that's not essential. And the first things to go are training and travel, two things that were part of what got me to train places all over the world. So suddenly, within days, I had an entire calendar year of events canceled, and it's in this spot of like, oh my god, what do I do now? And I was still single, I didn't have kids, it was just me, but at the same time I'd never worked like a 9 to 5 job. I'd been traveling, I'd been doing, I was working contracting for a company, but I was still my own boss. And I started exploring adding other skills, and I studied coaching and I studied NLP. And the guy I was studying coaching with, here's another serendipitous moment. He introduced me to one of his clients who was a cardiothoracic surgeon who needed help with his professional speeches. He was the head of the guild of cardiologists and cardiothoracic surgeons, which apparently they don't like each other very much, even though they both deal with the heart. It's a very competitive organ, different ways to approach it. And I worked with him on his speeches. It was great. And then he showed me two medical devices that he had invented and he was trying to raise funding for. And he said he had been invited to an angel investor conference in New York to present both of them for 5 minutes. And he asked if I could help him with the presentations. This was like 2009. I had never worked with a startup before, but I was like, you know what? A story's a story. Why not? So we dove into this. I created both the 5 minute pitches. I ended up traveling with him and presenting on his behalf, which is a very rare thing because usually they want to hear from the founder, but he was very high level and he's the kind of person that he could save 3 lives back to back in a day with open heart surgery, put him in front of PowerPoint and he was dead. So I presented on his behalf. And then there were these other companies that were invited to the same event, 80 something angels sitting in the room, and they just bombed in the first few seconds. Like they literally got shut down. And I was just like, why would they come to an opportunity like this and not be prepared? Why wouldn't they take someone like me to work with them? And then I was like, wait a minute. I started looking. Storytelling was a very nascent profession at the time. And there was nobody owning the storytelling for startup space. And I was like, okay, that's my target audience. That's what I'm going to be doing. So that was a very pivotal moment. I mean, there's a long way from that to actually getting paying clients from that. But I mean, he was a paying client, but then it was just like, how do you convince other startups to pay money to work on their pitches?
Yeah, totally. Storytelling sometimes is so undervalued. I mean, there's a lot has changed probably since the time you kind of went to that conference and or that.
Hey, a client of mine, actually, one of my students from Stanford just sent me. He was at a conference that the CPO of Uber was speaking, and he was asked what's the most important skill, and he said storytelling. This was just 2 days ago. So, I mean, it is. It's no longer that undervalued. I think more and more people know how important it is, but a lot of people don't even know what it is
Right,
and how
right,
you use it.
right.
I got a call today. This is the first time that this has happened in years, to my phone, which in Silicon Valley, your phone never rings. So that was weird in and of itself. And she's like, hi, I'm calling about the storytelling that you do. I have a kids' party on March 23rd. Could you come and do
You got little
storytelling?
young ones as clients now.
And I was laughing because early in when I started calling myself a storyteller, people would think, well, like, a storyteller, like a librarian or someone tells stories to kids. So I said, I'm sorry that it's a different kind of storytelling. And, but there is something very real about the storytelling for kids that carries through to how we should be telling our stories in a business setting.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's so much common even in some of the work that I used to do in terms of like interview preparation, things like the way you tell the story of the work you did or the project you worked on.
Mhm,
That is
mhm,
also a
mhm.
story. So I think
Absolutely.
such a universally powerful skill set that everybody
Yep. I
needs.
give a workshop called The X Factor. It's your personal brand story.
Mhm.
It's people when they have to either interview for a new job and they're asked, so tell me about yourself, or they're interviewing for a promotion or a self assessment or writing their LinkedIn profile. They have no clue what to
Mhm.
write about themselves or what to talk about themselves. It feels immodest, it feels fake, it feels braggy. But if you can't condense your achievements in a powerful, proud way without it being arrogant, but knowing what your true worth is, you have no justification for moving up the ranks or for them to hire you. You need to be able to tell that story with confidence and clarity and uniqueness. We're like, fingerprints. We each have our own, I don't want to say snowflakes, but we each have our own imprint of what makes us powerful and what our mixture of talents and skills are, and how we tell that is crucial.
Yeah, yeah, really. That's so true. You have been working with leaders and entrepreneurs to craft their stories for such a long time. So, what does your typical day look like as a corporate story, as a storyteller?
No day is like the day before it. This week, so I started not today, yesterday. I started at 8 a.m. giving a workshop for Swiss entrepreneurs who are coming to Silicon Valley next week, and they will have 3-minute pitch opportunities. So I had to prep them for that. And then I've got intro calls all the time. And then when I'm on at Stanford, I have meetings with the students, and there could be one-on-ones with my clients where I have 2-hour sessions where I completely deconstruct and reconstruct their investor deck or their sales deck. And that's like my main business. So I'm giving a live in-person workshop in a couple weeks for the Silicon Valley Product Management Association. So there's a lot of different things that pop up along the way. And I love seeing how my weeks shape up and surprise me.
Yeah, never a dull moment for you.
Never, never. And I love the flexibility because it also gives me the opportunity to, we were sitting having breakfast today with my girls and my husband, and that's a huge, huge privilege to be able to do, and to spend that kind of family time together and have 2 meals together a day. Um, so it's not easy owning your own business, but that's one of the biggest perks, that you are your own boss.
Yes, I think it's hard to beat the flexibility for sure. What do you think are the key elements of a powerful story, especially in business pitches?
The key elements of a business story. So first of all, there's a very specific intentional structure that I have set up for a good investor pitch and or sales or persuasion pitch. They're very, very similar. It's just the target audience is different. So it would be, are you speaking to an investor? Are you speaking to a potential partner? Are you speaking to a potential client? It will make the message slightly differently.
Mhm.
So the first element is, who's your audience? What do you want them to do? What do you want? Do you want to buy, invest? I mean, it's obviously not going to be a right after they hear you, they're going to buy. Right after they hear you, they're going to invest. There's different phases to that, but you want to set that goal of what you want from them, and that'll inform how you build it. So that's first and foremost. Second of all, you think of the first act of the play is the problem. Yes, problem solution. What you learned in business school, it is thousands of years old, not just tens of years old. It's been around for so long. That's the way the early storytelling was done. And it's very intentional. So you want to, as Silicon Valley investors call it, motivate the pain at the beginning. My favorite way of doing that is taking the founder's origin story, how they realized that this was a pain that needed solving, and how they decided to set out and devote their lives to it. And only then, after you've set the stage for the pain, proven that lots of people have this pain and it's worth a lot of money and people are willing to pay for it, and the solutions out there now just don't cut it, you move to the second act of the play, which is your solution, how it works, what it looks like, a demo, what the features and benefits are. And then moving on to the third act, that'll be the business side of how you back it up, how you make money, what's your market size, how are you going to penetrate the market, what's your competitive advantage, and then finally the fourth part, which is the vision for the future. Okay, how big can this get? Other markets, other products, a bigger vision, and what do you need to get there? What's the rocket fuel that you need? And the ask. So that's the basic elements, the 4 acts. So problem, solution, the business, the numbers that prove it, and then the what's next, where do we go from here
Yeah.
moment. And if you think about plays or movies, it's pretty much the same thing. A problem happens and then a hero emerges to solve it. And then there's the hero's action plan. And then, okay, great. Now they've solved it. What's the aftermath? What's next? How do we rebuild? How do we build even bigger?
Yeah, I like that. It's the classic like journey of a story, and again,
Mhm.
applicable in different ways depending on the audience or depending on the, I guess, problem you're trying to solve. S-
Yep.
v- so, as you have worked with so many different startups or investors, can you give me or share with us an example which really like storytelling is what changed the startup's journey?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I mean, just last week, I was working with a company and they're already a quite successful company and they have lots of enterprise clients and they're in the space of corporate learning and gaining knowledge and empowering your employees through that. And they didn't feel that the story they were telling was strong enough. And when I spoke to the founder, the CEO, about it, and I said that in 2 hours we can emerge with the core message, he was very skeptical, and he's like, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't see how that could possibly happen. But he decided to take a chance, and I met with. There was about 6 of them, the founding members, and then the CMO, and someone else who was in charge of like the Marcom, and I made them all answer questions ahead of time of how they see the message and how they see the pain of their clients. And I read all of their responses, and I have an LLM in my brain. I don't know how it got there, but it's trained on a 20-year data set, and it enables me to process this data, like we said, like the cooking, and start to find, okay, what is this really saying? Here's what's emerging, and here's what's emerging. So let the messages come. And in the two hours I had with them, so we split it. I usually do 2 hours straight, but for them we split it. We were able to then bring forth what they really wanted to say, and sometimes it's digging in deep to the essence of, like, what would you say if you could say anything? No holds barred, nothing censored. Sometimes it's good to go all the way there and then see how we can tone it in a way that's
Mhm.
acceptable. So I'd rather push it too far. So they had been stuck on this for so long, and finally, and let me tell you, the CEO was not an easy person. He was very, very set on getting it, very demanding, and when he wrote on the final draft, "I love this," I was like, "It's the best feeling ever," because that someone like that is not gonna write, "I love this," just for platitude's sake. So they were able to launch their website. Now, I don't know if it completely changed the course of their business. Time remains to be seen, but I've seen this time and time again. I kind of feel like founders, everything is super clear to them in their brains. Like, they see a very clear picture of their product, why it matters, why it's the best. And somewhere between their brain and their mouth, there's a missing link. Something's broken. And they see it, and then it kind of transfers out to like this, rah, 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 and nobody gets it. I saw a post today on a startup group, and someone said an investor friend of theirs had asked him to do some due diligence just to check into a few companies. And he went to their websites. He couldn't understand a bloody thing. He's like, "Am I stupid? Like, what? What?" I was looking at this like I have no clue what they're trying to
Mhm.
say. And you just can't do this. So sometimes finding that missing link between what they see and how it explains out is transformational for them, because it's the sense of like, finally, someone has come along and put my thoughts into words that I can communicate so the other side gets. And we're blind to it when it's our own stuff. It's very hard to see it
I agree.
ourselves.
Yeah, we are usually very close to our problems or whatever, even our solutions. So it's very
Right
hard
there.
for the person themselves to say, here's my story. And it takes someone like you definitely to come in and see the things that they cannot see. So I think that is really great. And I love your um, the analogy of like the LLM in your head and you're kind of processing this data. And so I mean,
I've always thought that I have an AI component in my brain, and then out came OpenAI, and I realized, oh, it's beyond just like the GPT. It's what makes it work, because it's really mileage. And it's having done so many of these and spoken to so many investors and seen so many trends go and come and come and go over the past 20 years that it really lends to my ability to just put it all together.
Is there like a process or a framework that you follow, like to get all of this complex
Yeah,
data from all, like there's technical information, then there is all this data that comes through the founders and things like that, and you kind of pull it into a
absolutely.
story.
Right. So, I mean, I'll show you what it looks like, the four acts of the play. But my clients will get from me a cheat sheet and a template that will help them pull their data into this framework that I want them to fill out. And then once they do that, they can send it to me and I can review it. And then it makes it really clear for me where they're at, what's missing, what they still need to do, and then so each of the components. So in the book I made it very clear how I want them to put the act together. And so I've and you know what? Maybe we'll give the link to the prep work to your listeners, so that they can try it too. But really, it's about putting it all together in a way. I tell them it doesn't have to be written nicely. It just has to be there so that I can review it. Sometimes people will send me a deck that is like, oh my God, 80 pages long, 80 slides, and just teeny tiny writing. And I'm just like, oh, no, 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 no. I'm not a weed puller. You don't want to pay me to be weeding your garden. Weed it out, bring the core, the essence, and then let's build from there, because you don't need all of this stuff. You don't need all this extraneous things and the excels and everything. It's just it's a big
Mm.
headache. And the tendency is, okay, I better put everything in so they don't think I have not covered everything. And then nobody's going to read through and sift through your weeds. Nobody wants that. They want the bouquet of flowers.
Right. And I believe whatever pre-work you're sending, like there is a part of that storytelling that starts with the right questions and then getting answers to those questions rather than your example of like pulling the weeds out.
100%. It's all about them. It is not about us. It's about understanding what the audience wants to hear, what their questions are, what their concerns are, where, and then weaving it together. So each of my four acts is made up of a series of questions. And then in the back of the book, I put in a whole section on questions about market trends and opportunities, questions about traction, questions about your value prop, things that if it's not directly in, you can either embed in or be ready to answer when they ask you. A lot of times people be super ready for their pitch, but not ready for the
Mhm.
questions. And you have to be prepared for that as
Right,
well.
right. Yeah, I feel like it's important to articulate, like you said, the answers and like what is in your head out there. It may not be perfect, but it is a way to sort of get your thoughts out there to somebody like you who can then help sort of weave it the right way.
Look, I mean, people will already feel relieved even after filling out the pre-work, because it's like, oh, finally, I'm clear on so many things. It's like you can't focus. I don't know about you. Like, it's very hard for me to focus if the house is a mess. So I kind of need things in orderly fashion. And then I can just kind of like, okay, now I can focus. You don't, if you have mess all around and data and things that are not organized, how can you possibly pull out a good
Mm.
story? So it's about cleaning things and maybe being very clear what should be in there. And then it's cooking it and connecting all the
Yeah,
dots.
yeah, we would love to like have that pre-questionnaire or whatever you have so people can download it. So we'll share that in the show notes.
Absolutely. Sounds great. I'll send you the
Yeah,
link.
thank you so much. So there's one thing that I always think about storytelling, and we talked about data, but there's the emotional aspect of storytelling as well. So how do you help founders, or when you think of storytelling, balancing that data component and the emotional component?
Well, the emotional comes in the first act, the motivating, the pain. That's where we have the opportunity to really make them feel something. In theatrical terms, it's the exposition. It's okay, setting the stage for what is going to go down. So, like I said, my favorite way to tell the pain is their origin story. So, I've worked with some companies that have had amazing backgrounds, amazing moments of how they found this. Sometimes we tell it through their own personal story. Sometimes we tell it through a client that they had that was struggling with it. Sometimes we tell it through a story in the world at large, but it's the emotion comes from people listening and saying, "Ooh, I feel that pain," or "Ooh, I want that." It's the carrot or the stick, and you want to elicit that response from people. And that's what stories do. Stories resonate on an emotional level. It can be sorrow, anger, happiness, surprise, excitement,
Mhm.
whatever. You don't want people to feel indifferent. You don't want them looking at their feet. You want them completely
Right,
focused on you.
right. That's so true. I think there is so much that, and even looking at you, I'm sure there is an aspect of expression, or what your eyes can also tell a story, your expressions can tell a story.
Absolutely. But that's icing on the cake. You have to get the
I
cake.
agree, I
I
agree.
keep coming back to food, right? You have to get your story straight. And you know what? A lot of times when people come to me and they're like, I've been told I'm not a very good presenter, or I speak too fast, or I speak too slow, or I'm not engaging, or whatever, I would say probably 85 to 95% of the time, they don't have a good
Mm.
message. Once you have a clear message, the fidgeting stops, the stuttering stops, the shifting stops, and you're really, and a lot of the nerves go away. So you have a clear map, and that handles a lot of the I'm not a good presenter things. And then once that's there and you've rehearsed a few times, we can work on the little refinements. Sometimes it's teeny tiny turns of the screw that can make a massive difference in
Mm.
someone. So, but again, you can't start fiddling with your performance if you don't have a great script.
Totally, totally. But that does bring up an important point as well, which is a lot of your storytelling, it can go on the website, or it goes in investor decks or pitch decks. But there is also the aspect of um, telling your story in a public setting. And a lot of people struggle with that confidence, like you were just sharing that example of speaking or of presentation in public. So what are some steps that you recommend that they take in order to improve that once the story itself is nailed down?
So first of all, nail the story, read my book, talk to me, get a clear story. Ways to improve the polish and I mean, I have an amazing colleague who I work with, and that's her specialty. So I'm happy to refer people to that. Acting classes are great, improv, Toastmasters, anything that you can get mileage. You need to be able to practice. And you can also practice on your own. Once you have a great structure for your story, practice in front of your family, practice in front of your friends, practice in front of your teams, practice in front of the Uber driver. Seriously, practice until it becomes so natural that it's a part of you. It's like in your cells. And record yourself. Watch yourself. Don't try to do it in the mirror. It's too self-conscious. Later, watch yourself. You might pick up things that you didn't realize you were doing, like playing with your hair, fidgeting, touching your necklace, clicking on a ballpoint pen, and those are things you want to clean up. Smiling more. I don't mean you don't have to be like that the whole time, but there's something like right now I'm smizing. I'm smiling in my eyes. My mouth isn't showing it, but my eyes are open and they're happy and they're engaged and they're passionate. And that's the kind of thing you really want to show people because they get that and they see you light up. They want to see your excitement about this. They want to see that you're invested in this. So it's a lot of different verbal and visual cues that you can really improve.
Any like communication mistakes that they should really avoid or be wary of?
Yeah, there's a lot. One is arguing. If you're pitching to someone and they ask you a question or they make a statement, you don't ever want to argue with them. That never goes over well. And sometimes they're just testing you to see what your
Mm.
response is. Let's see what else are some big ones. Here's a great tip that I've heard from investors. Investors want to see coachability. They want to see flexible mindset. And one way you can do that is if you're in an investor meeting, bring a notebook, an actual paper notebook, old school, with a pen or a pencil. And as they're talking to you, take notes, not on your computer, not on your phone, not your co founder taking notes for you. Because what that's showing them is you're interested enough in what they have to say that you want to write it down. So it's maybe not the mistake people, I mean, the other side, the flip side of that would be a mistake, but this is just an added bonus of how you show them engagement. Put your phone aside, be totally present with them in the moment. Everything else will wait. People today, it's very hard for us because our attention is spread in so many different ways. You want to show that you can totally focus in on them, and they're investing more than money in you. My husband, who's a founder, his initial investors are strategics, and they're very high level in their industry. And every single week, they take an hour to sit with him on strategy, on introductions, on different ideas and brainstorming. And that is even more valuable than the money they invested, because and he's open to it, and he's there, he puts his ego aside, he's there completely to listen and take it in. He may not always agree with them, but that's a discussion. So really take
Yeah,
advantage of
I
that.
love the idea. I love the tip of having that notebook. I think there's something about writing and putting the pen to the paper. You cannot replace
Absolutely.
anything else with it.
Hmm. Yep.
Talking about pen and paper, I wanted to get into your book a little bit more. What really inspired you to write your book, and tell us a little bit more about how this book can help others?
So I've known for years that I had a book to write, and everybody would say, "Oh, you should be writing a book." I'm like, "I know, I know, I know," and you can say, "I know, I know, I know" for years and just never get around to it. And I wrote a lot of blogs, and every time I would write it on a specific component of the pitch deck, I'd say, "That's a chapter in my book. That's a chapter in my book. That's a chapter in my book." So I had amassed a lot of the writing over time, so that made it easy to start kind of bringing that all together. Um, the opportunity came. I was interviewed on a podcast, and the podcaster mentioned that he had an independent publishing house. And I was just like, oh, wow, tell me more. And I ended up working with him, and he was the publisher. He had an editing team and a design team, really great. And it was, we had weekly sessions together where it was accountability. So it's either I met with him weekly, or if I hadn't had a chance to write for an hour or two, I would say, I'm going to cancel tomorrow's call, but I'm going to sit and write during that time because I haven't
Mhm.
had a chance to write. It's about making that decision and giving that time to yourself, putting it on your schedule, just like things like exercise, which are important, but somehow we push aside because we just don't have time. If you put it in your schedule and you make it a priority and you have an end goal in time, and you have a publishing date in time, then you stick to it. So so that was a huge part of it. I wrote the book. Again, going back to foodie terms, it's the cookbook. So if somebody can afford to come to my restaurant and have me cook the meal for them, they can do it by themselves. I wanted to give people a full picture of this investment process, of everything from are you ready to invest to how you start gathering the data, what should be in there. I tried to make it in a very accessible way, as if I was sitting and talking to them. And the audiobook is really like I'm sitting and talking to them for a few hours. So I always joke that, if anybody of the audiobook, I'm like, yay, I get to spend a few hours with you. I just wish I was actually in the car with you. So it's something that gives them a full picture and a full roadmap of how to create
Mm.
the investor deck. So I wanted this to really be a Bible, something that could really guide people on their way to creating it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wonderful. And I hope that more and more people can pick up the physical book or listen to the audio book, because there is so much uh, information, so much you can learn from the book about storytelling. And like you talk about the 4 acts, and I'm sure there is so much more actionable tips in there. Just we have had a glimpse of it so far. So I really encourage everybody to pick a copy up. I would love to sort of we're talking about books, and sometimes there's trends of like people read books and then they don't read books, and currently there's obviously a lot of hype around generative AI, and we talked about LLMs for a second here. How do you think that this Gen AI, or maybe the hype around it, will impact storytelling in particular for business communication itself?
So the last chapter of my book is called What's the Future of Storytelling for Startups? And I had written this last chapter in early October 22. And Jasper AI was like the go-to tool for writing copy and writing blogs and all these different things. OpenAI hadn't come out yet. And my husband had the idea of like, why don't you write this with Jasper AI and see what it says about the future of storytelling? And I'm like, isn't that cheating? And he's like, no, be transparent about it. So I went and I had to ask a bunch of questions, which today I know are called prompts, to get and piece together something. And I asked, what do you think the future of storytelling is for startups? Will you replace me? And all these things. And then I handed in my first draft of the book, and out came OpenAI and ChatGPT. And I said to my editor, I have a feeling, because of all the hype going on, I'm going to have to rewrite that chapter using ChatGPT, which I did. And the answers were very similar to Jasper. It just were able to put it in. It was GPT-3 at the time. Now we're up to like 5.0 or and one of the answers that kind of comforted me was, you're the humans, you're the storytellers. We are just kind of gathering all that data together and bringing it together. So it's still, storytelling is something that makes us so innately human. And it's like this shared experience, this history. It's the only universal thing that pretty much, except for food, that every religion, every culture, every country has. We all tell stories. We all connect through stories. So I am an AI adopter. I use it a lot to help me formulate things. I kind of see it as this. We're going back to the kitchen again. A sous chef. So it's there to do the chopping and the prep and everything that will save me the time and give me time to come into the kitchen. I don't use it when I write for my clients. I feel like that would be doing them a disservice. But I do encourage them, when searching for data on their market or on their competition, to use ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, whatever it is that they're using, and to really dig deep into it, giving very specific prompts, asking for very specific sources, getting the sources, citing the sources so that there's no hallucinations. I think it can save us a lot of time and give us access to a lot of things that we didn't have access to. And it kind of reminds me of the early days of the internet. I remember the first time it was web crawler before it was Google. Like suddenly you could ask questions and find
Yeah,
information.
there's
My 11-year-old, I was driving them home from school the other day, and she's like, oh my gosh, they wouldn't let us go on our computers today to answer questions, and we had to, she's like, I don't know how you did it.
without it.
I don't know how you did it without the internet going through school. And I'm like, well, we did it somehow. We
Yeah.
managed
Or
and we made it
yeah, or
through.
find directions,
But
right? We did
they
it
have,
without Google Maps. Oh,
well, oh gosh, I remember the days of printing out the map quests when I had to
I
be at
know.
different
I know.
places.
And
Yeah.
as we speak about ChatGPT and like the progression from Jasper to ChatGPT, there is like this whole hype around DeepSeek right now. And oh my God, it's blowing up in so many like ways. But that would like take us a whole other discussion. So I just wanted to come back
Yeah.
to storytelling and working with founders. There was another thing that was really went viral, is this whole concept of founder mode. So, as someone who works closely with founders, what does that mean to you or the people that you work with?
Well, I mean, I find Paul Graham to be a bit controversial, so I always take what he says with, you know, a grain of a healthy helping of salt. But at the same time, I totally get it. I'm married to someone who's in founder mode all the time, and it's a real mindset, and you're constantly on. It can be extremely exhausting, but you're either in it or you're not. you can't be halfway there. And the most successful founders I know have that X factor, that extra something that is undefinable that you can't put your finger on, that gives them that edge and that drive and that pick myself up, dust myself up, even if I've been kicked down, and keep on going in spite of everything. So I do think that there is founder mode. I don't think it means you have to sacrifice absolutely everything. I don't think it means that everything else should fall to the wayside. I do think it means that that's who you are. It's in your DNA. It's what defines you. So if that's founder mode to me.
Yeah. I love that. I would like to go on, but we have to come to a close. So I would like to end our conversation by asking you, what is a piece of advice that you would give somebody who's trying to follow in your shoes?
Don't follow in my shoes, follow in your own shoes. If we're thinking in general about finding your passion, maybe you can put this in the show notes. One of my favorite models is the Ikigai. It's a Japanese word, and it means your reason for being. And it looks like a flower where you have a center and then like four petals around it. And the four petals are what you love to do, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. And all four of those must be there in order for you to be living in your Ikigai. Because a lot of people are in jobs that pay extremely well, but their souls are being sucked out of them. They don't love it. A lot of people love doing something, like I said, with the acting, that I knew I wouldn't, unless I made it big, which is a very small chance. Not that I didn't believe in myself, but I had to be realistic. And that's can you be paid for it? So you have to find that balance to truly look at what you love doing, something you could do for hours, something you'd be willing to do and not get paid, something that fills your heart and your soul. Also something you're good at. If you're not amazing at something, then likely you're not going to get paid for it. But there also has to be a need there. If you're trying to do something that the world doesn't need and force it on them, and there's not this pain, there's not this need, then again, you're not going to be off. So those are the main things. Those are the real things that I find are really what makes life good, because then it doesn't feel like work.
Yes, I think that is really important to understand. Is there's the job you do, but then there's so many things outside of the job that actually make your life worth living. And I think you share a lot of wisdom in that principle. You said Ikigai, right? Um, Yeah, I
Ikigai.
really encourage everybody to go look it up. I've seen a version of that because I'm also at Stanford doing the Women in Management group facilitation. And so there's a version of that where you have these four boxes with a circle in between.
We share a manager with
Yeah,
Mary.
yeah,
Wonderful,
exactly.
Mary.
We do. Um, so it was wonderful to chat, and there were so many nuggets of wisdom that you shared. So thank you so much for that. I'm sure everybody will
My
appreciate it and
pleasure.
really take advantage of it. And I really encourage everybody to go pick up a copy of Sticking with My Story by Donna. And thank you so much, Donna, for being here.
Thank you, Priyanka, for
Thank
having
you.
me.
If today's conversation sparked new ideas or challenged your perspective, I'd love to hear from you. I work with tech leaders and founders to tackle complex challenges, whether it's scaling teams, making high stakes decisions, or turning ambitious ideas into reality. If that sounds like something you are navigating, let's connect. Reach out via my website, thepriyankashinde.com, or find me on LinkedIn.